2 little boys. He was a highly respected professor at Florida State College of Law.
Since we got the guilty verdict in, I'm allowed to say this. How much of a selfish piece of shit do you have to be to take your children's father away just because you don't want to drive too far? You don't like the way things are panning out. You don't want to do shared custody anymore. To take your children's father away from them? Oh my God, dude. That is so disgusting.
Dan Markel was shot twice in the head in broad daylight in the driveway of his home in the Benton Hills neighborhood here in Tallahassee. The last day of Dan Markel's life that day began like any other of his mornings that summer. He woke up, he drove his 2 little boys to preschool and dropped them off, and then he drove over to the gym to work out. After finishing his workout, he returned home. He pulled in his driveway, opened his garage, but little did he know that throughout his just normal routine that morning, he was being followed.
Oh my God.
He was being followed by 2 hired hitmen who traveled all the way from Miami to Tallahassee for the sole purpose of murdering him.
How many of you guys went to the gym this morning, or went to get groceries, or went to pick up your kid from daycare? Those normal little things where we feel the most safe, that is where they plan to kill Dan. His guard was completely down. I would think in broad daylight when I'm coming back from the gym that I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm back at my apartment, I'm in a parking lot. Like, something about the broad daylight really gets me.
Just like something out of a horror movie, he pulls into his driveway, and the car that, unknown to him, pulls in right behind him. Moments later, Dan Markel's neighbor heard a gunshot. He looked out the window and he saw a light-colored Toyota Prius backing quickly out of Dan Markel's driveway and then speeding away.
Out the car.
The neighbor waited for a couple minutes to see if maybe Dan Markel came out of his house or backed out of his driveway too. And when nothing happened, this neighbor got that funny feeling that maybe something could be wrong here. He walked in the garage and saw that the driver's side window of Dan Markel's car was shattered. He was alive, but he was moaning.
No.
He was unresponsive, and he was terribly injured. The neighbor then goes and calls 911. Law enforcement arrives, and they find Dan Markel unresponsive with gunshot wounds to his head. He was then taken to the hospital, where he survived for several hours before he was actually pronounced dead.
Don't try to look sympathetic now, you piece of shit. You organized it. They said he was guilty, so I could say that now. You organized it. Don't look sad. Don't look sad because you have to hear the details now of what you were involved with.
His little boys that were deprived of their father that day were just 3 and 4 years old. Law enforcement immediately began to investigate to figure out who shot Dan Markel.
Just want to give a quick little round of applause here for a prosecutor that is laying it out so incredibly clearly what happened A to Z. She is doing a really fantastic job. Easy for the jury to follow, and it makes it difficult for the defense to poke holes in a story that makes complete sense.
And the evidence they find sets them down 2 separate paths. One path is that they had to track down that light-colored Prius that the neighbor saw fleeing from the crime scene.
Okay.
And identify who was inside that Prius. And the other path relates to Dan Markel's personal life. They looked to see who, if anybody, in Dan Markel's personal life would hate Dan Markel enough to kill him. And after years of tireless investigation by law enforcement, both of these 2 paths led directly to this defendant.
Both paths led to him?
Let's talk about the path involving Dan Markel's personal life first. In looking at who might have a motive to kill Dan Markel, law enforcement learned that Markel was entangled in a very nasty divorce with his ex-wife, who is the defendant's sister, and her name is Wendy Adelson. A review of their divorce case file revealed that Wendy Adelson asked the court to allow her to move back to Miami, where she was from, with the kids, in order to be near her parents, whose names are Harvey and Donna Adelson, and her brother, the defendant. Dan Markel was adamantly opposed to his children being relocated to Miami.
Honestly, I'm nervous about raising kids in LA. I'd be nervous about sending my kids to Miami too. When I go to Miami, I'm there to party. I get it.
For this
And
custody
you didn't want to be
dispute,
separated from them?
the judge ended up ruling in Dan Markel's favor. Wendy Adelson was not permitted to move to Miami with the children.
Oh,
Unless, of course, something happened to Dan Markel.
oh my God.
A review of Wendy Adelson's emails revealed that her mother, Donna Adelson, hated Dan Markel.
Oh,
was
Donna's
desperate
involved too.
to find a way for Wendy and her children, who were Donna Adelson's grandchildren, to be able to move to Miami. Donna Adelson suggests in these emails that y'all will hear about several ways that Wendy Adelson could threaten or bully Dan Markel into submission, into getting what she wanted him to do. Donna Adelson even suggested offering Dan Markel a $1 million bribe to allow the relocation.
Sorry, I'm just gonna say it. These motherfuckers think that they're the best parents, the best family for the job, that they need to get the kids away from Dan and that they should be living with them. However, you guys are, one, able to kill the children's father and take their father away from them. You're not thinking about the children then, and you're definitely not the better family then. Or two, can you imagine feeling like your dad left you from a very young age when you're 4 years old, but then later finding out that grandma bribed dad with $1 million to go somewhere else and he took it? I would feel devastated. They do not have the children's best interest in mind. This is selfish. This is exactly why I called it the narcissistic family.
This defendant, Charlie Adelson, would pay a third of that $1 million bribe to Dan Markel to make that happen. The evidence in this case will show that Donna Adelson's closest confidant was her son, the defendant. She and the defendant talked multiple times a day, every day. He was the person with whom she would constantly vent and complain to about Wendy's situation. The defendant was also the person that Donna Adelson relied on to solve her problems. And this was a big, big problem for Donna Adelson. And she made it the defendant's problem to solve. The divorce between Wendy Adelson and Dan Markel was final about a year before the actual murder. But that was not the end of that case. Litigation was ongoing, to say the least. Each side would continue to routinely file violations of the custody agreement, violations of the settlement agreement, and that continued right up until Dan Markel's death in July of 2014. This was a highly emotionally charged situation between them leading up to his death. However, there was no physical violence that Wendy Adelson needed to be rescued from or anything like that. But make no mistake, this was a very messy custody dispute.
Family courts are brutal. I used to work at a law firm a couple years ago, and there was this guy who was always very nice, very happy personality, but at the end of the day, he would just go dark. He would go dark, and he was our family law attorney, and sometimes he would talk about the cases. It made him really sad how people could go from loving each other and taking their vows to saying the worst things about each other, throwing the biggest piles of mud. These cases like beat the light out of him. I don't know. Family courts, I haven't had to deal with it, but it scares me, bro. It scares me.
Shortly before the murder, in fact, Dan Markel, the victim, filed with the court and basically asked the court, he alleged that Donna Adelson was disparaging him to to his children by saying bad things about him.
I believe grandma was doing that.
And he asked the court.
Y'all think grandma was doing that? She out here